can be super exhausted, jet lag, everything goes wrong. And then you're there, you sit, and that moment, and you gain some energy. And then the battery will charge itself in those moments.
I'm Zsolt Bognar, and this is Living the Creative Life. Our guest today is cellist Daniel Müller-Schott. Daniel, thank you so much for being here and joining me on the series.
Thank you, Zsolt. It's a pleasure to be here.
I had the great pleasure of hearing you here in Bad Kissingen with your recital yesterday. By the time you came through the stage door, you seemed centered and collected and in a joyful spot. That's the appearance for us as audience. Is that your experience, generally speaking, when you walk onto stage?
I was just coming from my home in Munich, and with, as you know, train journeys, anything can go wrong.
Or everything can go wrong.
Yes, exactly. So I was late, I was rushing to the hotel room was not ready. So I didn't have any time to really rest or anything. Then I rushed to the hall, I rehearsed. I went back to the hotel. I ordered some food in advance. Of course, they forgot about it. And suddenly my suitcase was lost. They couldn't find it anymore. and all these things, you have like crazy surrounding. So everything was sort of total chaos. And then you have that moment, okay, I got my suitcase back, at least I had something to wear on for the concert. and then I put on a suit. I couldn't, warm up with the cello because there was no time. And then just on stage and actually sitting down, that was the first calm moment yesterday. So you sit down, okay, now Beethoven A major, and then, okay.
You had this work which really stood out to me by Schumann. And this first phrase, you open your heart to the most vulnerable, sensitive music. Well, what happens on a day where you don't feel that way?
In Schumann's case, I would say it's so personal anyway, because we know so much about the life of Schumann, about his last years also, and so Schumann is a very personal composer anyway, so I feel that it's like almost a friendship throughout time, and so maybe then it's easier to forget about the daily issues and really focus and be connected with the incredible, sensitive and wonderful insights that he gave us.
How about this idea of activating a super active listening?
The way of concentrating is something that you can't actually artificially have in your practice room. For me, it's impossible. So you need, and this is also for every musician, you need a certain regularity in performing and sharing music with an audience. And in those moments, you just train yourself to listen more carefully, to listen more intensely what is actually happening in the music, and then you can build on that and react to it more sensitively. And this is it's a fascinating process.
And finding this sense of ease, where you're in your most creative spot, there's so much that we're balancing on stage.
Yeah, and you have to actually take risks to not be perfect, because there's no way of perfection. Of course, you're striving towards the best ever version that you can achieve at this moment, but there's always room for growth and more insights, and for me it's also in my experience when I look back at my teachers, and if the focus was too much on perfection and getting it right, it limits you in a way. It puts yourself in a cage. So you have to take risks. And for me, a mistake or something that happens in a concert is only a possibility to somehow go beyond, and also to remind yourself that it's all about life and life process, and it's like in life, anything can happen, but it's the interesting question is how to approach it and how to move on, so to speak.
Did it ever happen to you that you reached a couple of moments in your life where you felt a little bit discouraged, where you felt like, I'm working hard and I don't feel like I'm growing?
I think those moments are the most productive and most important, when you question yourself, when you're, of course, you have to be on this journey very self-critical, and and that was, of course, brings moments of frustration, of questioning, doubting yourself, but this can only lead to growth in a way. So I'm very familiar with that, of course.
You're still quite young, and I'm seeing a long...
Thank you. That's very nice.
I'm still seeing a long list of the awards and the recordings and the orchestras and the different conductors you worked with. My assumption would be that you would have to get a relatively early start with all of that. Did you come from a musical family?
I do, yeah. My mother was a piano teacher and a harpsichord player, and she played with many musicians in my hometown in Munich, and also with orchestras, chamber orchestras. So I was surrounded by music from a very early age. So I still remember when we went in Munich to hear the first symphony orchestra, like the Bayerische Rundfunk. This was an incredible moment to experience such a immense variety of instruments, of sounds, and it happened to be when I was 5 years old that the Schumann cello concerto was rehearsed, and I fell in love with the instrument. I just felt this is what I want to do, and later I found out that actually Yo-Yo Ma was playing and Sir Colin Davis was conducting. Of course, I didn't know at that time.
Did you feel like in starting out with that trajectory that you were ready, or you feel like you still need to grow to step on those particular stages?
I went to the young Tchaikovsky competition when I was 15 only, and this was my first experience with an international competition of that stature.
Isn't that a significant intimidation factor when you at 15 are witnessing this incredibly high level, and then you have to find your zone? Is that a mindset of having to prove yourself?
I was just starting with my teacher at the time. I was only for 3 years with him, and so it was kind of a shock to see the professionalism also in Russia at that time. How the teacher, the parents, everyone was surrounding those young musicians, and I was sort of just starting. And looking back at it, actually, my luck in a way was that the competition there for violin and piano started a week earlier, so I had 1 week to really focus and practice. And I was, not leaving my hotel room at the time very much, because I was really blocking myself, because I felt I had so much, to keep up and to do so much work that, I did everything, at least that 1 week, to raise somehow my abilities to play.
I have the feeling that a lot of us feel we have to take every opportunity in order to construct a musical life which is self-sustaining. We're hoping that we can get a steady stream of opportunities so that we can make a living, first of all. But is the idea always to say yes, 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 more, higher, faster?
Definitely not. In our world, where we have, of course, always faster, quicker, bigger, more, And of course, that can lead into total destruction in many ways. So you have to look within and see what is in my life, what I want to achieve, what I want to do, and why am I doing it? You know.
But do you feel like these conversations are possible to have within the music industry, if we call it that way? Do you feel like you have the freedom to make these choices when the people who are helping you, whether it's your manager or your publicist,
Yes,
their well-being is also somewhat tied into the number of concerts that you choose to play?
I always felt that, because I'm a freelance musician, I also have to decide myself how I want to organize and manage my life. Being a musician takes so much from you that you also need another part of life where you have, more family life, friends, doing other things besides music. And this is so important for me that I want to bring in those elements to my music making. And of course, the moment when you have your own family, for example, of course, the perspective totally changes and you see things differently.
I want to latch on to what you said about being a musician takes so much from us. How would you know if it becomes too much, if your pace becomes too much? Is that a feeling? Is that an energy level?
Oh yeah, it is. I mean, if you feel that, after traveling, for like 2-3 months non-stop, and you feel that there's an inner tiredness, and that is, of course, the sign for yourself that you have to take some time off. You have to do something and to recharge the batteries. And I think every musician has felt that and has been in that situation.
You've made recordings through many stages of your development. When you listen back to some of your earlier recordings, are you aware of some sort of evolution?
Hopefully, yes. Listening to your own recordings, first of all, is quite tough. But and I was actually, crazy enough in my young years that when I was asked to record my first CD, and this was in the Bach anniversary year in 2000, so it's 23 years back, I was crazy enough to say, okay, I want to spend time and also record music that I feel I actually have spent the most time and I'm experienced enough. And this was the 6 Bach suites. I mean, the Bible of the cello repertoire, and which was, looking back, quite wild. So I want to do it again and again, and maybe also re-record that repertoire. My mother studied a lot of, of course, harmony, ornamentation, the whole structure and architecture of music. So I felt that this was a really very strong basis of my music making, and I think this also helped me, approach other composers later, looking in music history, like from Bach to Beethoven to Brahms, Schumann, and even until our time, working with contemporary composers. So Bach is sort of, the basis of all.
Daniel, before we sat down for this conversation, we were talking a little bit about the subject of learning how to practice. Mm-hmm. What's your emphasis for yourself in your daily process?
I would say efficiency is the word. How to be more efficient in the practicing and how to focus, how much time I have to work or rework certain pieces of music, and then also being a cellist is always about the element of sound, how to produce sound, how to deepen the sound, and even playing one note or one scale is already quite a sensation because you're so connected with your cello, with your instrument. It's such a velvety, deep quality that I really love So for me, sitting down at the cello in any case is some kind of a luxury. So that's something that I really enjoy.
And does it have to feel joyful?
Well, there are different layers also, because the sound making process is sort of a joy, but then also, of course, there are certain pieces that you really struggle with, and that you have to somehow find a way to somehow make them come to life, and so it's a mix of joy and challenge.
And finally, if we're speaking about the role of friendship in our lives, you brought up your friend Lars Vogt. What did it mean to you to have him in your life?
Oh, yeah. I mean, he was such a wonderful human being, and this came across his music making and every encounter that I had with him, and I'm just simply grateful that I got to know him and got to make music with him. So, it's tragic that he is not with us anymore. Yeah, that's very sad.
What are the elements of what you experienced from him and your collaborations and his character that you feel will live on in the people who knew him?
Well, he had the ability to always, look beyond composer, and for example, when you played a Beethoven trio or the triple concerto, then there was always a lot of discussion with him on details, on insights, and it was you always got a sense of there's a searching process with him, and that was truly inspiring. And I think his music making had such depth. And I was now listening to his recording of Schubert trios, that I think is his last recording. And it's all there. It's overwhelming. He actually started that program of Rhapsody in school, that he asked his friends and colleagues to join him and reach out to schools, to school classes, and tell the young or younger generation how wonderful it is to experience music. And so I think over a very short time, he had like 70 or 80 soloist friends of him, connect to the idea. And I was, from the first moment, I was just fascinated to do it and to go to schools. Whenever I played a concert in the morning, I went to a school, I played for them, I told or tell what I find so fascinating about being a musician.
What's been their response? If they've never heard it, that could be pretty overwhelming.
It is, yeah. I mean, you just connect to the wonderful openness and curiousness of young people, and they are immediately touched by music, and they have images, and it also triggers their fantasy, of course, many pictures. And I also always ask them, so what do you feel, what do you see here when I play this passage? For example, if I play something from the Carnival of the Animals, or if I play a Bach suite, some dance movement, and of course you have immediate responses, and they in many cases they wrote after my visits, they wrote letters that now they actually managed to start learning an instrument and playing something. And my key, I would say, to wanting to be a musician was always the process of doing something together, that you play together with your friends, you make chamber music, and even when I play a solo concerto, I always feel it's chamber music on a larger scale. And this kind of community and friendship that you can create through music, that's, I think, very important for anything in life.
And to look into your future now, when you wake up each day, what gives you hope and energy and the impulse to want to go on?
it's just so wonderful to explore life in so many forms in a way, and so I'm just grateful to experience more aspects of it. Just meeting like we do now, or I play music, or I travel and I meet new friends and new connections. And I think it's just that, life itself.
Daniel, thank you so much for joining me in this conversation. It was a delight, and it was
Thank
really...
you so much. It was
I was
wonderful.
Benefiting from it personally as well. So thank you so much.
Thank you.